Welcome to the Team of One podcast, where we share the story of the solopreneur by exploring different ideas from different voices so you too can find a way to live life on your own terms. My name is Mo Choice, and I hope you enjoy this next episode. Peace. Welcome back to the Team of One podcast. Today we're joined by Suzanne Vyvoda. Who are you?
Hi, Mo. Really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I am someone that has spent my entire career in the clinical trial space. In layman's terms, that means operationalizing clinical trials that are designed by scientists or physicians, either at sites, so your average doctor's office, at some of the service providers that help enable clinical trials, or at biotech and pharma companies that are designing new drugs and bringing those drugs to market.
If you had to explain that to a group of fifth graders, how would you say that?
I would say something like, how do the drugs that you take, how does
Yeah,
Tylenol?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great point. I mean, that's what's tricky. I don't have a fifth grader. How do the medicines, I'll go with this, something like, how do the medicines that we take either from our doctor's office or from the pharmacy get there? How do we know that they're safe? How do we know that they actually work? That's the work that I do, the operational side of that. I am not a physician. I am not a scientist. But I am someone who operationalizes the processes that bring those drugs to life.
You lost the fifth graders again. You lost them. That was
good. That
good.
is a tough audience.
How you get medicine when you're sick. How do we know that medicine works and it's safe and it's not going to make you even more sick? My job is to make sure that happens. That's all I think. But by the way, what's super interesting is when I work with people, I always say, if you talk in a way where the fifth grader doesn't understand, then I used to find that I had to be clever when I was an entrepreneur, when I was a bit like I had to talk in business terms and show how clever I was. But I realized a lot of people would nod their heads but not know what I'm talking about. And then we think, but they're in the industry. It's like, yeah, but then we get into the habit of talking industry language.
Yes.
I think that's a bad habit.
It is. And I think, I work in something that's very technical. And frankly, when we're actually working and talking with patients, we do, when we write documents for them, say a consent form for a procedure or a trial or what have you, we do watch the grade level that's written at. And that is for that comprehension. But we live so deeply in the world that we live in that we don't always catch that we are so deep in our own nomenclature that we're almost hindered by it.
I have a theory also that people use technical language to show off their competence and to hide behind their incompetence. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I hear you. Do you see that in your industry?
I see that some, and I think the way I'll qualify it is there's so much technical expertise. We have so many people in our industry that have amazing CVs, resumes. They have medical degrees, PhDs, tons of publications, patents, etc. And those folks of us that work in operations often. We got here one way or another, but there's usually a scrappier background, how, we got where we got. And so it can be one versus the other, usually not, ideally not, but it can be.
I think, and also in terms of, because we're going to talk about solopreneurship now, I'm assuming you identify as a solopreneur?
Currently, yes, I absolutely do. As an opportunistic one, certainly not a direction that I thought I would land in, especially at this point in my career. So, but yes, I do identify as one currently, and who knows where that will turn in for the rest of my career.
How do you define the term solopreneur? How would you define it?
Yeah, the way that I define that is that I work for myself. I don't have a boss. I work in a number of different client environments. I don't have employees. I don't have contractors. So I am an N of one. And that again kind of goes back, okay, I'm speaking jargon. That's a stats term, but that just basically means it is just me, myself, and I on a day-to-day basis. Yes, I work with clients. Yes, I may contract with, say, a small business lawyer or a website builder or an accountant. but my business is me, myself, and I.
So in your definition, if I had a VA, I wouldn't be a solopreneur?
That's a really good question. And to be honest with you, I don't have a perfect answer for that. Number one, I've never had a VA. I haven't gotten to that point. And number two, it really depends on how embedded that person is. To me, that person may be providing a supportive function. Like, I don't consider my small business attorney an employee of my business. I don't consider my bookkeeper an employee of my business. They're supporting me in various ways, but
Exactly.
I
That's
don't see
exactly,
them. Yeah.
that's
And
how
and
I
I
would.
guess that's kind of where I go with it.
So the preneur part is the risk taking. So if you think about an entrepreneur, the risk is with the enterprise, which means we don't know if this works. So you think about, if I come up with a new medicine, or I come up with a new thing to help with our health and well-being, but it's never been trialed before. That's entrepreneurial, because we don't know, A, if it works, B, if it's commercial, because I know that there's a lot of good treatments that are not commercially viable, which means no one's going to do them. So even though they can help us, no one's going to pay for that, right?
All correct.
So that's the entrepreneur. The business owner is, I know it works, I'm just going to copy it, like a coffee shop owner or a laundromat owner or a car wash. Like, we know it works. There's no risk with the enterprise, right? So, you know, I meet people who like own a barber's, and they say, I'm an entrepreneur. It's like, you're not an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I hear you. Those are good delineations.
Good distinction.
Yeah.
I think so.
And yeah, for sure. So yes, I would consider myself one. Yes, I bring people on to help me with projects, and I'll get into why that's been so important. That's I think an area that when people start doing this, they really underestimate.
So just to close off on that thought. So if an entrepreneur has an enterprise that they don't know if it works, and a business owner has an enterprise they know works, and they're just owning a version of that, then what's a solopreneur? Because we often think about numbers.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but the problem is solopreneur intimates risk.
I agree, but I think that it can fit either model. I think a solopreneur can go. Yeah, absolutely. Go out there and you run a business and you know it works, or you are taking on risk because you're putting your reputation, your experience out there and building something on it. That's my angle.
I think that works. But back to what you said about how embedded they are, or if I have an accountant, I think here's a different take. And this is from all these conversations I've had on this podcast. The risk in the solopreneur means that I don't know if I can carve out this life for me. And it's about my life. It's not about the enterprise or the product or the changing the world. It's about my solo. It's just me. And the risk is, I don't know if I can make this work.
Well, I absolutely feel the statement.
I think that's the truest I've heard. And also, if you're hiring people, contractors, VAs, or staff, usually in an enterprise or a business, they have the same goal. It's to hit targets in the business, or it's to help create this new product. But as a solopreneur, no one cares about you living your best life. So even though they're working for you, the accountant, the VA, they don't care about your goal. They just want to get their tasks done and get out of here. That's it. That's the difference, I think.
I agree with you. I think that's a great point. I think a business owner can be similar to that, depending on what the business is. But yes, it's your risk. It's whether you can make it work or not. And it is definitely a different world than I think a lot of people think that it is.
Here's one final thing I'll say about this. The employee of the business might get their job affected by the business goals and the business performance.
If there are employees of the business, yes.
Right. Whereas as a solopreneur, you're going to need an accountant. You're going to need, you might not need a VA, or you might not be able to afford a VA. But ultimately, you're getting these guys in to buy you time, not to hit business goals.
Yeah,
that's the
true.
difference.
I think that's
right?
fair. I think solopreneurs often have grand plans to scale things and bring on those people at some point. Whether they get there or not is a different story. I don't know
Do
if
you
everyone,
do you have that?
I wouldn't say that I don't have that. I know that's flipping it on its head, but I guess my reality is I don't know whether this is for a few years. I don't know if this is forever. I don't know if this is something that I want to scale, that I can scale. I think I'm open to a lot of different eventualities. I think, I originally saw this as a portfolio career that I would get to later on, after I'd sort of done more in corporate. And the reality is, after an acquisition, I saw an opportunity to go out on my own and try it, because that's really what the market in my industry was bearing. And
Let,
so,
let's let's flesh that out a bit. So
okay.
again, in fifth grade language. By the way, I asked for fifth grade language because that's my level of intelligence, not because I'm trying to put you out. So I'm reading between the lines. So an acquisition means wherever you worked, the environment changed within that company structure,
Yes.
and
So
that means
another
that you were,
company
yeah,
bought the company that I was working for. So
got
it
it. Which meant
ceased
you
to
got.
exist.
Oh, I see. So your job was disappeared.
Correct. That company went
And then,
away. The company that bought us was a huge company, and they didn't need our little company workforce in order to continue to be successful. So I found myself without a job in a market where there were not a lot of jobs in a full-time capacity. So I had two choices. I could sit and wait for a full-time job to come along, or I could look at what the market needed or what the industry needed. And it's an industry that's really strapped for cash right now. And so it's one that's taking advantage of hiring people in either a fractional capacity, in a consulting capacity, in a project based capacity, versus as a full time employee.
clear. Sorry to hear about the layoff. There's a lot of people that say the layoff made me take the leap, but
Mhm.
I've been thinking about it for a while. Were you thinking about it for a while, or was this just because of this that you started to think about it?
Great question. I've been through a number of layoffs. My industry is ripe
Cutthroat.
with them. It's a reality that we go through, because when a drug doesn't prove to be safe or doesn't prove to work, we discontinue that program. So I've been through a number of those, and so to be honest with you, this was on my radar maybe 10 years down the road from now. Maybe when I got to a point where I could scale back a little bit, that I didn't need that full time income, and I could play around with some board roles or some other pursuits that were different than my full time role. I wasn't planning for it now, but it came
Explain
up,
that.
the opportunity came up, and I went for it.
So let's say there's a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is you were thinking about it all the time before your layoff, your final layoff, right? And 1 is you hardly ever thought about it. At what scale were you by the time you got laid off?
When I got laid off in this case, I was a 2 or a 3. It
That's
was
it.
it was really, Mo, it was like I'll do this in 10 years. But when the opportunity came up, I'm opportunistic. I'm not one to sit around and wait for the industry to come to me. I'm
I love
one
it.
to seize the day. And
I love it.
seizing the day meant going out on my own. And so I did.
By the way, just as an aside to anyone listening, I hope someone's listening. This is the same in solopreneurship. I go into solopreneurship, I come up with an offer that I think the market's going to like, and it might not like it. And then
Yeah.
I'm either going into my savings or borrowing
Mhm.
to survive, or I have to go back into work. It's the same idea, whatever way
Yeah.
you flip it,
Yeah.
because there's no job security. I know you're saying your industry, Suzanne, but I have people who got laid off from Meta and Intel and
Yeah.
IBM and
Mhm.
Hewlett Packard after decades of
Yeah.
service.
No, I get
You
that.
know,
And I'm not suggesting that it's just my industry, but I am suggesting that what my industry is going through currently has forced a lot of this. There have been more layoffs in the past couple of years, but it's cyclical. There are years that go by where drug development is doing amazing, and there are years that go by where there's just nothing. And that's
Yeah,
the
got
kind
it.
of industry that it is. It's very cyclical. It's very volatile. And so the other thing that, occurred to me was, if I could be a solopreneur and build something of my own that was successful, I hope that caveat's very important. Perhaps that would take some of the volatility away from my position in the industry.
Very cool. Sorry, I got distracted. The cat. I got this thing when I get fresh blueberries. I put them in water and I put salt inside. I learned this from a chef that was the best way to clean them. And the cat just jumped on the counter, and I was worried she was going to gobble them
Well,
all up.
sounds delicious.
Um, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being established as a solopreneur, I'll never go back to work, and 1 being, I don't know if this is going to work out at all. Where are you at the moment?
Mo, I'm going to give it a 5 or a 6. I'm right smack in the middle, and
Say
I
more.
can certainly
Say
go
more.
into why.
Yes, please. I think this is super interesting.
Yeah. I'm in the middle because, number one, you never know what's going to happen with the industry. If there was an amazing full-time role that came up that was just perfect, that gave me that stability, that gave me that opportunity, would I 100% say no to that? I can't say that I would.
Why?
Because it does provide that stability, that benefits, that salary you're going to get every other week or twice a month or whatever it's going to be. I am definitely not in a financial situation yet where I can just do whatever I want on whatever island I choose and get paid or not get paid. I live in reality, and there is security in having that regular paycheck.
So it's just, okay, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
What came to my mind was, in people who do what you do, bigger than us projects, right?
Okay.
I've been involved with people who are part of these life-changing projects. I've never been interested. I don't care. I'm very selfish. I don't care what happens to the world. I'm not going to damage the world, by the way, just FYI.
Okay,
I'm
that's
not going
great.
to harm the world, but
Glad to hear
I
it.
don't think it's my job or my calling to help fix the world or leave a legacy or anything like that. The only reason I'm saying that is, when you said I would definitely take a project on, my immediate instinct was because you want to be part of something bigger. But it was interesting that you went straight to finance.
I did. And it's not that I don't want to be part of something bigger, but I can be, as a solopreneur, part of a whole bunch of bigger things. When I work with clients, the clients I'm working with are still these same sorts of projects. They're developing, they're developing medicines. They're developing technology that's supportive of developing medicines. I haven't taken my foot off of that gas pedal. I am now working in a different capacity than I did, but the volatility associated with it is different. And I didn't say definitely. I said it would depend on what it was.
Totally.
It would have to fit the right circumstances. So I'm not
Sorry if
like,
I
oh my
misspoke.
God, get me out of here.
Yeah, got
But
it.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if the right role came along,
yes,
and it was the right leadership team, the right circumstances, the right program, I wouldn't not take it. And I know it's a double negative, and that's
no, I got it.
but
I got it.
yeah.
Because I know what you mean, because there is no way in hell I would probably live under a bridge before I took a job. Probably.
And that is some people's mentality. And for me, I don't know where this is going to take me. I'm also not one to just sit and wait for a job to land in my lap. I'm going to go out and create opportunities for myself, because that's the kind of person that I am too. So whether it's as a solopreneur, whether it's building something much larger at scale, which might be really cool, or whether it's going back into a corporate environment, I haven't taken any of those options off my list.
And by the way, I have taken jobs, interim CEO jobs and contractor type jobs, but it was always with, so it's wrong for me to say I would never either. But it was always with this is a sidestep to help me get to solopreneurship again. It was never to get, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But I like it. I don't think definitiveness, is that the right word? See, I can't talk in big words. You see, certainty. I don't think certainty in a position is useful to say, I will never do this and I will never
Yeah.
get married and I will never work for this again. And I don't think it's useful, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't
I
want.
agree. I agree. You never know what
Yeah.
opportunities are going to come up and what my career might look like in a year or 5 or 10. I just don't know the answer to that. When I was younger, I really loved the idea of planning everything step by step. That gets harder to do as you get further along in your career and there become different options like this.
Agreed. I'd
Mhm.
never say never again. And the thing also is the way I make decisions, especially as I got more older and aware and wiser, is when the opportunity arises, I will look logically at the why and why not. And then it's feeling. Does it feel exciting, right?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? As
100%.
long as logically it makes sense. Like I'm not going to lose my house, or I'm not going to have to move my kids to. I don't have kids, by the way, but I'm just giving you examples, right? I don't have to move my
Sure.
kids to another country, or I don't want to be away from my elderly father, or whatever. As long as
Yeah,
logically it
100%.
goes, we can make it
Yeah.
happen. It's feeling, and it's feeling at
Oh,
the time.
yeah. I agree.
At
I
the
think that's
time.
a big part of it. There's a big motivating factor to being excited about stepping into something, regardless of what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Okay. So when did you get to 5 out of 10 as a
Um,
solopreneur?
yeah, that's a great question. And I think the short answer is I did this for a year, all of 2024, January through December, kind of again, opportunistically and kind of thinking that next job would produce itself. And in January of 2025, when it hadn't, I started getting to that 5 or 6. You know what? Maybe I bet on myself. Maybe I go much further all in and start really developing a bigger network, some different approaches, some differentiating factors, and start really trying to lean in much harder on this. Again, with the intent to not necessarily, who knows what will happen in the future, but I decided to bet harder on myself. Yeah. And so it's been close to 12 months since I've been at that 5 to 6 range. And I've really been working on developing a lot of the infrastructure that you need to be successful operationally. I've run into a lot more pitfalls of things I didn't expect. I have sort of felt the squeeze of it a little bit more. Uh, from I think a delivery perspective, a client perspective, a network perspective, but also an infrastructure perspective. When you really are out on your own, for example, if something happens with your computer and you're not a tech person like I'm not, there's no one to call. There's no IT.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. And I mean, my toothbrush stopped working. Brand new Oral-B fucking IO thing. And I'm trying to figure out how to fix it. And then I was like, I'll just pay the $85 and buy another one. You know why? Because the time it's going to take me to figure it out, I would have made the $85
Yeah,
back
sure.
in my business. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So what you were talking about earlier was how you decided in January to go all in, which suggests that you were 1 foot looking for a job, 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of thing, right?
I think that's fair.
Yeah. And I picked up leadership uh, training contracts through government funded apprenticeships. And I could have just kept doing that. And really, where I start, because I was like, let me make money on this side from my thing, and then I'll start giving up. Then I started to bring them to, and then it got to a stage where I was doing too much of both. And then I was like, I have to give up one, but that's growing now. So I'll go all in on that. When I
Got
went
it.
all in on that, within 6 months, I trebled my revenue. And that was, and I say this to people, it's a bit like a relationship or whatever. If you don't focus on it, I don't think you're going to know what's possible.
I think that's
Like,
fair. And that's
fully focus on.
certainly been my experience this year. Now, I would love to tell you that 6 months ago I tripled my revenue. That has not necessarily been my journey, But I did decide to really make it a priority to build that foundation, to lean into things like thought leadership, to build my network, and to really
Brand,
start. I'm
build your
sorry.
brand, and build
Yeah,
your
build my
brand.
brand and build sort of build out some infrastructure to support what could become, a more serious enterprise. And I don't mean enterprise in the, big enterprise way. I mean it in a way that I could sustain myself.
So let's talk about next level. Is it financial for you? Is how do we get from a 5 or a 6 out of 10 to an 8 or a 9 out of 10? Is that purely financial?
No, it's not purely financial, although I'm lying if I tell you that's not a factor. Financial stability is important. I do have a mortgage and a daughter and all of those sorts of things. My husband also works at a startup, a very, very early stage company. So there is a volatility aspect to this. And so I won't tell you that's not a factor. But I also think, there's iterations you have to go through to really nail down what it is you're trying to accomplish. What is your superpower? What is the service that you're providing? And I think, especially in a field that's as technical as mine, I have been iterating over the past, well, really 2 years on exactly what the market needs and where my skill set can best support it in a way that people are going to gravitate towards. There's a lot of different directions to go in a field like this. And it's a matter of trying to find exactly where you fit in and where there's market pull, versus providing a service that might be awesome that people don't want to buy.
And the market is ruthless. If we don't
Absolutely.
provide her with something valuable, and often it's not just it's valuable, it's have I presented that in a way where she recognizes the value? Because that's
100%.
positioning. Yeah, because there's some people that are really good at that, but their value isn't as strong as, let's say, ours, but they're very good at positioning, so they get a lot more opportunity. It's like having good PR kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, Mo,
And
this is
so,
huge. So
yeah,
I took one marketing course in college. That marketing, PR, sales, it's not my background. Um, coming into this, I couldn't speak any of those languages. I couldn't have identified an ICP. I wouldn't have known what that acronym even meant. Commercial sales, marketing, that's not my language. So what I have had the opportunity to do is learn a lot of skill sets where I really didn't have expertise coming in. And I think what I underestimated was just doing my thing was not going to be enough. Doing operations, to make new medicines in and of itself isn't enough to make a successful business.
no,
You have to understand the books and the accounting pieces. You have to know how to position yourself, how to write copy, how to market and sell yourself. You have to know how to network. You have to know how to plug yourself into the right environments. And that's just not it's not a vocabulary that I had. And
no.
one of the things that I've loved about this past year is not only am I a strong operator in my field, I now understand from having to learn on the fly all of these other things that go into what it takes to build a business. And it makes me stronger as a solopreneur. It also makes me stronger if I were to go back into a full-time role.
100%. Because full-time role, you're also positioning yourself against the competition to
Exactly.
win. I will say, I don't know how to do copywriting. I don't know how to do lead funnels. I don't know how to do accounts. I understand them because I've been involved in business a while. But here's what I would say in relation to that. There's two things we need to do as solopreneurs: find new clients and then give them what they paid for.
Sure.
Usually we're very good at giving them what they paid for. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gone down the solopreneur route. I mean, there are some people that go down it because it's cool, but they don't know what they're doing. But if you have the competence to deliver value, and you know that you have, because if someone's willing to pay you a salary at $100,000 a year, you know you have 3x, 4x that in value. Otherwise, they wouldn't pay you that salary. So we already know usually that we have value in the market because of the salaries that we're getting paid. So if we know how to deliver to the customer, the only thing we need to learn is how to get the customer.
Correct.
Right.
Definitely.
And that was a lot of detail. And this isn't a criticism. This is telling you what I learned.
No, I
I
understand.
was so overwhelmed. I need to learn websites and I need to do a course and I need to do a book and I have to learn all this technology and I have to. It's not true. What I
I
needed to
agree
do,
with that.
what I needed to do was find one way to get the attention of my desired customer.
I agree with that.
One
And
way.
I'm not suggesting that I have gone out and learned how to code websites, by no means. One of the things that I do a lot in my industry is outsourcing, and that's applicable to any industry. We outsource all sorts of different things to service providers and experts in my world, whether I'm a full-time employee or not. So of course, I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to need someone to help me with
To
legal
do legal,
matters.
yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
I'm not a copywriter, but my stance has been to bring in the right people, the right experts, but to also learn alongside them in terms of process. Yes, I'm paying for that,
Yeah, you
but
need
I've
money.
also
You need money for that.
chosen to learn, all right, so what is this process? What is it like to build a website? I don't want to code it, but what does good copy look like? What do the books need to look like? I don't
Fair.
want, I frankly, I can budget, I do that personally. I've managed massive medical development budgets, again, trying to put on my fifth grade reading hat, but that doesn't mean I want full responsibility for that. Someone can do that better than me. And so I'm by no means arguing that I want to wear and own every hat. What I have had to do, though, is learn what hats I have to worry about that as an employee of a company, I didn't have to worry about before.
What hats are you? What do you think you're missing now to get you to the next step?
Well, I think I'm missing more clients. That's definitely one piece of it. But
It's an outcome, though. That's an
it's an
outcome, right?
outcome. And what I would say is it's a long sales cycle. A lot of my clients or potential clients, they're trying to raise money. And in my world right now, that is a difficult thing to do. So it's not so much no one wants to work with me. It's finding the right clients that have the budget, that need my expertise. And so I have greatly expanded my network this year. I have leaned into some angles of work that I may not have leaned into before. So I have expanded what I can offer, which I'm proud of. And I think I have a whole bunch of potential clients, but again, it's an industry that's focused very much on fundraising. It takes an average of $2 billion to get a new medicine from concept to market, and an average of 10 years. So it's not a fast moving industry as it could seem. And if you don't have a commercial product as a company, i.e. a medicine that's for sale to customers, you don't have any revenue. So you are reliant on fundraising to conduct business.
Very clear. So I'll ask the question again. So what's missing in order for you to get more clients? What's the thing? If there was one thing you could figure out now, I don't want the macro answer, which is I'm going to figure out how to get new clients. What do you think you need to figure out in order to figure out how to get new clients? What do you think that is?
I think this is a matter of iterating on what these people need that I can provide to companies.
Fifth grade language, please.
What do these people need that I can provide?
What? That's it? How?
No,
So you have to figure out.
I'm getting to that, but you said fifth grade language, so I backed up.
Oh, sorry. You
No
said something
problem.
about iterating something, and I got lost. Again, it's my
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
The companies
yeah. So
the company,
just so I'm clear. So when you say iterating on what they want.
okay, so what I'm getting at is the companies that don't have operational expertise internally, so they don't have me, don't necessarily have the funding to pay me. The companies that do have funding often have internal teams that are already established.
Which means
Therefore,
they
they
don't
don't need to pay me. Now, there's a lot of nuance to this, and the nuance is going to get technical. So I'm not necessarily going to get into
need.
that.
No, that's okay. How do you
But
solve that? How do you navigate that situation?
so what I meant by iterating is thinking through how to position myself towards companies that already have money and already have internal teams, and maybe there's something missing there.
So it's how do I find these companies, or when I
Nope.
find them, how do I get their attention?
I can certainly find them. I can certainly get their attention.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more than that. And it's a little contrarian to what my industry typically does. But I think there are a lot of opportunities to help these companies or help these internal teams be more successful with their operations.
So it's presenting to them the idea that you can make them more valuable.
Correct.
That's the thing that you need to figure out. How do I present my value to them so that they can see it and understand it?
Again, and I'm trying to be really straightforward about this. This is not something that companies typically do. The companies that are in my industry, there's a formula for how they're often set up and established and how they
And they
hire
don't
out.
deviate. And they won't
This
deviate
is a
from that.
disruption. A lot of
I
what I have to offer is a disruption to how
see.
this work is typically conducted.
Got it. That's
Now,
very
I
clear now.
believe this disruption can provide more ROI, more value,
Got it.
return on investment. I think this disruption can provide additional efficiency because I think that we can improve the process that brings medicine to patients.
Great.
But the way we traditionally do it isn't necessarily supportive of that.
Or the only way.
Right.
That's the Grace Hopper said the most dangerous phrase in the English language is we've always done it this way. And so you're basically challenging that.
That's exactly where I'm going. Yeah, that's
Amazing.
100% where I'm going. Now, in
Very
the
cool.
meantime, a lot of my clients, I am stepping into those traditional roles and I'm filling them in maybe a fractional capacity rather than a full-time capacity, or on a retainer basis. Say they need me for 3 months. They can't bring me on full-time, but they need me for something that's small and concentrated. So there are opportunities, certainly, to do what the industry normally does. I think my angle, though, is I'd like to innovate. I'd like to show the industry that I work in that there is a better way to do things that is different than what has always been done.
Excellent. I love it. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think we started with a technical language and talking about layman's terms. And I think from a personal branding perspective, certainly, especially if you're wanting to get the attention, I think it's always helpful anyway to me to be able to speak technically and in layman's terms. And I think you do that very well, by the way.
I appreciate that.
And then we talked about solopreneur, entrepreneur. What is the difference? We talked about how it's an old story, really, of how getting laid off then accelerated this idea that you had about ultimately going alone, but it came 10 years earlier than you'd imagined. But you had two choices, really: wait for someone to give you something or create the opportunities yourself. And you know that typically in the industry, it's very, very difficult to find situations that aren't going to be potential layoffs or potential failed enterprises. And so, and you also talked about how in 2024, you were essentially 1 foot in, 1 foot out, really expecting maybe opportunities to get back into work. But then you went all in January, and financial stability has a big part to play because you're a mother, your husband's in the startup world, which is not stable, ever stable. You got a mortgage. You talked about all these things, but you also understand that it's super important to do good work and provide value. And then we talked about two things that you need to do as a solopreneur: get new clients and then give them what they want. And obviously, you know how to give them what they want. But it's how do we get them? And I think that's where we ended. It's like we have to show them that there's a different way of thinking about their challenges and their goals and how to get them. And maybe you can open doors that way. And that's really what you need to figure out next.
That's definitely true. And I think the other piece is I think people underestimate what being a consultant can mean. Being independent is one thing, but having the systems and infrastructure to really support it is another. So I talk with many folks in my industry that are looking to make a similar move. And I encourage them to really think it through thoroughly before they make that leap.
That was a really enjoyable conversation. Thank you for taking part of it. Is there
pleasure.
anything, like, where can people find you? Who do you want to reach out to? Anything you want to say to close this off?
Sure. So again, I work in a very specific space, but if anyone is interested in clinical trials, the way they are conducted, how medicines reach the market, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you'll find a link to my Substack, where I've started diving in much more deeply to some of the industry norms that I see in my world and how we could reapproach them in a different way. So it's educational, it's meant to be somewhat industry insider, but I've started expanding on that and really trying to also educate the public on what it takes to bring a medicine to market, how medicines get there. So people can find me either on LinkedIn, or I encourage you to take a look at that Substack.
Amazing. And we'll put all of those details in the notes, and anything else that you want to add before we publish, we can add them in the notes. Suzanne Vyvoda, thank you so much for spending today with me.
My pleasure, Mo. It was a pleasure to be here. And thank you for such an interesting topic.
Yeah, my pleasure. The difference between surviving and thriving often comes down to a single shift in perspective. Maybe today's conversation sparked something for you, or maybe it confirmed what you already knew. I'm going to keep exploring what it takes to reach the next level. For more solopreneur stories, hit subscribe. And if you know someone who'd be perfect for the team of one, please introduce us on LinkedIn. See you next time. Peace.